Hey there, sleepy wanderer. Tonight, we're descending gently, calmly, into the shadowed halls of myth. You've heard of the mighty Zeus and the stormy Poseidon, but there's another brother, the one who doesn't shout, doesn't roar, doesn't throw lightning or ride sea foam. His realm isn't in the sky or the waves, it's beneath your feet, quiet, still, and very much alive. So fluff your pillow. Let the outside world dim like a candle left to flicker. You're not falling asleep, not quite. You're crossing a threshold, a mythological threshold, down into the realm of Hades. No, not hell, not the devil. That's a much later story. This is the real Hades, Greek god of the underworld, brother to kings, husband to queens, keeper of souls, and misunderstood for millennia. Let's begin at the beginning. Not with death, but with birth. Before there was a god of the underworld, there was only chaos, a cosmic soup of darkness and potential. And out of this chaos rose Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. Together, they birthed the Titans, colossal beings who ruled before the Olympians ever dreamed of Mount Olympus. Among these Titans were Cronus and Rhea, the power couple of primeval Greece. Cronus, ever ambitious, took the throne from his own father, Uranus, with a sickle and zero hesitation, a brutal promotion, a warning of what was to come. You see, Cronus had a prophecy problem. He was told that one of his children would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his own father. And if there's one thing ancient mythological dads excel at, it's doing exactly the worst possible thing in response to prophecy. So Cronus, rather than simply being a decent parent or going to some divine therapy session, decided to devour each of his children the moment they were born. One by one, he swallowed them whole, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, right into his gut. A family reunion inside his stomach. But Rhea, mother of gods and icon of fed-up moms everywhere, wasn't about to let this continue. When her youngest son was born, she pulled a fast one. Instead of handing baby Zeus to Cronus, she wrapped a rock in swaddling cloth. Cronus, either blind, indifferent, or terrible at guessing baby weights, swallowed the stone. And thus, baby Zeus was whisked away to be raised in secret on the island of Crete, fed by the goat Amalthea and protected by divine nannies with a flair for banging shields to drown out baby cries. Meanwhile, Hades, swallowed whole by his own father, was living what we might call a digestively complicated childhood. But unlike later interpretations of underworld gods as inherently evil or monstrous, Hades didn't become bitter or twisted. His fate wasn't forged by rage. It was built on balance. Eventually, Zeus grew up, rebelled, and returned. Now a god with abs, thunderbolts, and very little patience. With the help of his siblings, yes, the same ones who were still marinating in Cronus's stomach. Zeus tricked Cronus into vomiting them back up. Hades came out fully grown, understandably dazed, possibly covered in Titan's stomach slime, and definitely overdue for some sunlight. But he was back, reborn in a way, and ready for war, because the cosmos was not big enough for both Titans and Olympians. And so began the Titanomachy, a decade-long battle between the old order and the new gods of Olympus. Hades, alongside Zeus and Poseidon, fought against their father Cronus and the mighty Titan forces. It was a war of fire, sky, sea, and shadow, and it would reshape the cosmos forever. Hades, far from being a sidelined figure, played a pivotal role. He wasn't just the guy who waited at the finish line to collect souls. He was a warrior, a strategist. His helmet, forged by the Cyclopes, granted him invisibility, not just literal stealth, but symbolic power, the unseen force, the quiet edge. While Zeus hurled lightning and Poseidon split the earth with tridents, Hades slipped through the battlefield like smoke, striking unseen and unrelenting. When the dust settled, the Titans were cast into the deepest pit of Tartarus, and the three victorious brothers stood before a new world. Then came the moment that would define their legacies. A simple act, a roll of the dice, the division of the cosmos. 3 lots were drawn, 3 realms divided. Zeus drew the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades drew the underworld. It wasn't a punishment, it wasn't a demotion, it was fate, it was balance. After all, what's the point of Olympus without the roots below? And so, Hades descended, not in defeat, but in duty. He took up his post, not as a villain, but as a ruler, a sovereign of shadow. His kingdom was vast, mysterious, and not nearly as bleak as later stories would make it seem. The Greeks didn't view death as inherently evil. The underworld wasn't hell. It was the inevitable destination of all souls, good, bad, and in between. And Hades, he was the one who made sure it all worked. No chaos, no imbalance, just order beneath the surface. That's why the Greeks didn't speak his name casually, not out of hatred, but reverence. To name Hades was to acknowledge the finality of life, the quiet judge at the end of all things, the god who never left his realm, not because he was trapped, but because he took his duty seriously. He was the responsible sibling, the one who didn't throw sky parties or ride seahorses through mortal storms. He tended to the roots, while the others admired the branches. Hades built a kingdom, stone by shadowed stone. He ruled it not with cruelty, but with calm, with silence, with respect. He built the rivers, each one symbolic, the Lethe for forgetting, the Styx for oaths, the Acheron for pain, the Phlegethon for fire, and the Cocytus for wailing. These weren't tortures, they were metaphors, reflections of the human experience, loss, memory, truth, and sorrow. In his halls stood 3 judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, mortal kings elevated to divine arbitrators. They judged the souls of the dead not with fire and brimstone, but with fairness. There was a place for the good, a place for the wicked, and fields of asphodel for the in-between. A resting place, a neutral eternity. There was even Elysium, a paradise for heroes, poets, and philosophers, a celestial meadow of dreams. This was the world Hades governed, a system, a cycle, not chaos, not suffering. And unlike his more dramatic brothers, Hades didn't demand temples on every street corner. He didn't thunder down threats or hurl divine tantrums. He ruled steadily, quietly, a god of boundaries, of transitions, of inevitability, a god you didn't worship for favor, but respected out of awe. And that, dear listener, is how the god of the underworld came to be, not born in flames or carved from fear, but shaped by duty, by silence, by shadowed purpose. So as you lie there, letting your mind drift like a soul on the river Lethe, remember, Hades wasn't the end. He was the continuation, the curator of what comes after, the quiet god below, and from here our journey only deepens. Next, we descend further into the caverns of meaning, to explore how Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades shaped their realms, and each other. But don't worry, you don't need a coin for Charon. You've already made it this far, and Hades, ever the gracious host, is expecting you. The story of the Greek gods is often told as a hierarchy, Zeus on top, Poseidon to his side, and Hades somewhere in the shadows. But that version, that's Olympus PR, a polished statue with some of the edges filed down. In truth, the three brothers were equals. Each drew a lot, each took a realm, and each embodied something colossal and essential: sky, sea, and shadow. Not in order of importance, but in a cosmic triangle of balance. Let's start with the sky. Zeus was lightning incarnate. The kind of god who didn't just rule from on high, he needed to be seen. Thunderous, dramatic. Kind of like your extroverted friend who always needs to host game night just to feel alive. He ruled Olympus with a firm, occasionally flirtatious hand. Justice? Yes. Order? Sure. But also ego, thunderbolts, and a family tree that reads like a tabloid. Zeus was the god of kings, law, and sky, but he often forgot that ruling isn't the same as listening. To Hades, Zeus was both a brother and a boundary. They had their moments, alliances during cosmic crises, shared understanding of divine responsibility. But they were different at the core. Where Zeus was wind and flash, Hades was earth and stillness. Zeus ruled what could be seen: clouds, storms, lightning streaking across the sky. Hades ruled what was hidden: roots, memory, the unseen threads of fate. If Zeus is sky, Poseidon is surge, unpredictable, deep, and emotionally tempestuous. The sea god was second in command, but first in brooding. His mood could shift with the tide, generous one moment, vengeful the next. He was also fiercely territorial, especially when it came to land disputes with mortals. Cities like Athens, Corinth, and others felt the splash zone of Poseidon's real estate battles. Spoiler, he lost more of them than he'd like to admit. Poseidon and Hades, their relationship was complex. They weren't enemies, far from it. But they didn't exactly braid each other's hair either. Poseidon lived in constant motion. His realm was alive, loud, and chaotic. Whirlpools, sea monsters, tridents striking the waves in frustration. Hades preferred structure, boundaries. A river flows in one direction. A gate opens or closes. There's no tide in the underworld. But there was a deep respect between them, because both ruled over what mortals feared. The sea could drown you. The earth could swallow you. Both were reminders that nature and the gods were never really under your control. Now back to Hades, third brother, but not third best. Unlike Zeus and Poseidon, Hades never built a flashy mythology around himself. He didn't disguise himself as animals to seduce mortals. He didn't flood cities because someone forgot to offer a prayer. He showed up, did his job, maintained cosmic balance. But this distance from mortals made him feel cold, even feared. People didn't build statues of him in the town square. They didn't whisper his name lightly. And perhaps he preferred it that way. While Zeus sat atop Olympus and Poseidon patrolled the coasts, Hades ruled from a throne of obsidian. Miles below, where judgment echoed and memories lingered. Not evil, not vengeful, just steady. Where his brothers ruled by spectacle, Hades ruled by permanence. The dynamic between these brothers wasn't just familial. It was mythological physics. Zeus governed what comes from above: light, law, authority. Poseidon governed what moves below: seas, earthquakes, storms. Hades governed what remains beneath: memory, death, roots. Each a different form of power. Zeus wielded control. Poseidon wielded chaos. Hades wielded inevitability. And it's in that inevitability that Hades found both his strength and his solitude. Unlike his brothers, he never sought expansion. He didn't hunger for temples or statues. He didn't crash parties. He stayed in his realm, not out of exile, but out of respect for cosmic balance. His silence wasn't withdrawal, it was stewardship. It's worth pausing on how the world viewed the dividing of realms. To mortals, Drawing lots seemed like gambling, a random grab at cosmic power. But in mythic logic, it was something deeper, a ritual of trust, a sacred agreement. And Hades never contested the outcome. He accepted his realm, not with reluctance, but with reverence. He wasn't pushed into the underworld. He chose to rule it. In many ways, Hades had the most stable kingdom. No constant wars, no rebellions, no thrones overthrown. His palace in the underworld, the House of Hades, was built not from vanity, but purpose. Massive halls carved from shadow and stone. Flowing rivers that carried souls, not ships. And gates that opened only when fate allowed. His throne wasn't gold. It was carved into the foundation of existence, immovable, eternal. And he sat there, not to rule with an iron fist, but to listen, to judge, to guide souls to their proper place, without drama, without favor. But let's not romanticize it too much. These were siblings, Greek ones, and just like your cousins at Thanksgiving, they had their tension. Zeus, at times, looked down on Hades, not out of disdain, but misunderstanding. To Zeus, rulership was performance, applause, oaths sworn on high. To Hades, it was unseen labor, quiet maintenance, the thing no one notices until it stops working. Poseidon, too, clashed with Hades now and then, especially when earthquakes stirred up fault lines between sea and soil. Their boundaries weren't always clear, and neither were their tempers. But when the cosmos shook, when monsters rose, or titans stirred again, the three brothers stood united. Because underneath the storms and shadows, the oaths still held. They were not just gods, they were balance. Greek mythology wasn't just a series of fantastical stories. It was a lens into how people made sense of the world. And the three brothers, they represented forces beyond control. The sky could bless you with sun or strike you down with lightning. The sea could feed your city or swallow your ships whole. The earth was always waiting, holding, keeping count. And so Hades became something more than a god of death. He became a metaphor, a symbol of acceptance, of the unseen, of the quiet structures that hold everything together. And in a world obsessed with power, spectacle, and noise, there was something sacred about a god who didn't need to shout. As we drift deeper, we'll meet someone who did something few dared, someone who entered the underworld and lived to tell the tale. Because no myth of Hades is complete without Persephone, the queen who walks between seasons. And that's where we're headed next. So stay settled, stay slow. The path to the next story is gently opening. We return now to a softer stillness. You're drifting deeper, not downward, not upward, but inward, into a myth that isn't just about gods and kingdoms, but about longing, duality, and transformation. This is the story of Hades and Persephone. But it is also the story of seasons, of cycles, and of the aching tension between what is taken and what is chosen. Let's begin not with a god, but with a meadow. Persephone was not yet queen when her story began. She was simply Core, the maiden, the daughter, the springtime bloom, the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Raised in the bright air of the upper world, Persephone danced among fields of wildflowers and wheat. She was loved, but she was also protected, guarded like a sacred grove, kept from shadows, from choice, from change. And one day, she wandered too far. Some say she followed a narcissus bloom that wasn't there before. Others say it was fated. The flower was planted by Gaia herself, a key placed in soft earth. And as she reached for it, the ground cracked. Not violently, not like a quake, more like a parting, a quiet invitation. And from that opening came Hades, in a chariot of obsidian and gold, drawn by horses with eyes like smoke and breath like frost. He did not roar. He did not rage. He simply reached for her. And they were gone. Demeter's grief was immeasurable. The goddess of growth halted the world's blooming. Crops withered. Trees shed their leaves out of season. The air grew heavy with absence. She searched day and night, refusing to let the world turn without her daughter. And no god dared confront her fury. Not even Zeus, her brother. Eventually, the truth surfaced. Persephone was in the underworld, and Zeus had known. He had allowed it, perhaps even arranged it. Because even among immortals, alliances are often sealed with silence. But beneath the earth, something unexpected was happening. Persephone, who had been core, was no longer just the flower child of Olympus. In the underworld, she became something new. She walked its halls, not as a prisoner, but as an observer. She spoke to spirits. She asked questions. And slowly, perhaps reluctantly, she found that she understood its rhythms. And Hades, he was not the captor the stories would later make him out to be. He did not chain her. He did not coerce. He offered her a throne beside his own. No god had ever done that. Not as ornament, not as arm candy, but as queen. But nothing in myth is simple. Demeter's wrath could not be undone. The world could not be left in frost. And so a compromise was struck. Persephone would return to the surface. But, and this is where mythology thrives on detail, she had eaten pomegranate seeds in the underworld. Not many, just a few. But in myth, food is binding. To eat in the land of the dead is to become part of it. And so, Persephone could not fully return. A new cycle was born. For part of the year, she would reign beside Hades, queen of the underworld. For the other, she would return to her mother, goddess of spring, of life, of bloom. And so, the seasons turned. This myth, often reduced to a tale of abduction, is far more nuanced when whispered slowly. Persephone is not merely stolen, she becomes. Demeter does not merely lose a daughter. She makes space for a queen. Hades does not force love. He offers a world unlike the one Persephone knew. The underworld did not corrupt her. It revealed her depth. She is not light nor shadow, but both. Was it love? It depends on when you ask. In early sources, Hades takes Persephone without warning. In later ones, there's a tenderness, a mutual understanding forged not in romance, but in resonance. What we do know is this: they ruled together. She never fled. He never took another consort. That alone makes them rare among divine couples. And Persephone, she wasn't passive. In later tales, it is she who judges the souls of the dead. She who tempers Hades' stern justice with compassion. Their reign is shared, and their myth is layered. To truly understand Hades and Persephone, you must stop looking at them as a couple. Instead, think of them as a cycle. They are death and rebirth, seed and bloom, root and petal. Persephone is not lost, she transitions. Hades is not evil, he is transition itself. Their story is the blueprint for how the ancients understood change. Nothing ends. It just moves, shifts, falls into shadow, and rises again. And perhaps that's why this story lingers. Not because of romance, but because of recognition. We've all been core, innocent, unaware, sheltered. We've all been Persephone, forced to face what lies beneath the surface of ourselves. We've all felt the moment when the ground opens and we're taken somewhere unexpected. And maybe, just maybe, we've met someone in that place who didn't rescue us, but reminded us that we had a throne of our own waiting there. And so the myth breathes on. The underworld, far from being a prison, becomes a second home. The pomegranate, not a curse, but a symbol of growth. Persephone walks in two worlds, and Hades does not chain her. He waits for her return. Next, we journey into those realms, rivers, judges, gates, and echoes, because the kingdom of Hades is vast, structured, and far more fascinating than mere shadow. So stay still, stay curious. Let's continue, dear listener. No need to move, no need to stir. The shadows around you are soft, the silence is comforting, and the story flows forward like a river, quiet, inevitable, and ancient. You've met the god. You've met his queen. Now we cross into their kingdom. In most mythologies, the afterlife is vague, a whisper, a mist, but not here. The Greek underworld is geography. It has structure. It has borders. It has rules. Hades' realm is not chaos. It is order beyond life. And like any good mythological kingdom, it has its gates, guards, and guides. So come, let's walk the winding path. To enter the underworld, a soul must first cross the threshold of death. The journey begins not with fire or fury, but with waiting. When a mortal dies, their spirit is called a shade, faint, colorless, but aware. They gather near the river's edge, not a river of water, but of separation. This is the river Styx, the black ribbon that divides the living from the dead. But you don't just swim across. You need a ferryman. Enter Charon, the eternal boatman. Charon does not speak. He rows. With sunken eyes and bony hands, he guides the dead across the Styx for a price. A single obol, usually placed in the mouth of the deceased or under the tongue. If you had no coin, you waited. A century or more, drifting at the banks. In this simple myth lies a profound message. Even in death, there is cost. Even in myth, there is preparation. Once aboard, Charon ferries you through the fog. No lantern, no map, just memory and silence. And then you arrive at the gates. Cerberus is not just a beast. He is a threshold. The three-headed hound of Hades guards the entry. Not to keep souls in, but to keep the living out. He is not evil. He is duty. Each of his heads sees past, present, and future. He knows every soul that enters. He remembers every god that has passed through. Some tried to trick him. Orpheus with song, Hercules with strength, Hermes with speed. But in most stories, Cerberus is not overcome by violence, but by cleverness or respect. Like the realm he protects, he demands understanding, not domination. The underworld is not dry or desolate. It is threaded with rivers, each symbolic, each sacred. Styx, the river of hatred and unbreakable oaths. Even the gods swore upon it. Break that oath, and even Zeus himself would fall silent for 10 years. Lether, the river of forgetfulness. Souls drink from it to forget their earthly life. Reincarnated spirits return to the world washed of their memories. Acheron, the river of woe. It's the sorrowful entry point where Charon begins his journey. Phlegethon, the river of fire. Not hellfire, but passion, consuming and bright. It runs near Tartarus, the realm of punishment. Cocytus, the river of lamentation. Souls that mourned too deeply or were unburied drift near its banks. These rivers wind through the realm like veins, not of punishment, but of meaning. In Hades' kingdom, every sorrow has a name, every emotion has a current. After crossing, a soul meets the judges, not gods, not monsters, just once mortal kings, now arbiters of fate. Minos, the thoughtful one. He asks the final question. Rhadamanthus, precise and fair. Iacchus, the gatekeeper of Elysium. They don't wear robes. They don't strike gavels. They simply weigh the truth of your life. in balance with your actions, intentions, and heart. And then they point to one of three paths. Your afterlife isn't chosen by a god, it's chosen by you through how you lived. The fields of asphodel, the realm of the ordinary. Souls here wander, not in torment, but in forgetful peace. No pain, no joy, just soft neutrality. Elysium, or the Elysian fields, reserved for the noble, heroic, or exceptionally wise. Lush meadows, gentle breezes, an endless serenity. A paradise not of wealth, but of peace. Tartarus, a place of punishment for the truly wicked or the cosmic traitors. Titans are chained here. Sisyphus rolls his boulder. Tantalus forever thirsts. Tartarus is not hell. It is a prison, not a fire pit. Hades does not torture. He contains. The Greek underworld is not about judgment in a modern sense. It's about echo. You carry yourself with you. If you were kind, the land is kind. If you were cruel, it mirrors that back. There is no bribe, no savior, only consequence. And unlike modern afterlives filled with heaven or hell, the underworld is a continuum, with rest at one end and reckoning at the other. It isn't about fear, it's about facing what's beneath. This is where Hades' nature is clearest. He does not choose your fate, he only holds it. He is not death, he is what comes after. He guides, he maintains balance, he keeps the gates from breaking. Even the souls in Tartarus, he doesn't torment them. He ensures the damage they caused in life does not spill into the realms of the living. That is not cruelty. It is cosmic responsibility. Even now in our modern world, the underworld echoes through dreams. That moment when you descend stairs in sleep. That familiar stranger waiting in a boat. That soft, dark hallway that isn't scary, just deep. It all comes from here. Hades' realm lives in our imagination, not as horror, but as home for the unknown. It's not punishment we fear, it's the mirror. And the mirror doesn't lie. So where would you go? Elysium, asphodel? Would you drink from Lethe or hold on to memory? These aren't just mythological questions. They are human ones. Because the underworld isn't about death. It's about completion. It's where every part of you gets seen, weighed, welcomed, or warned. So breathe deep, still traveler. You've walked the rivers, met the judges, glimpsed the halls. But we are not finished. Because Hades' story doesn't end in myth. It echoes through temples, coins, and even video games. And next, we journey into that legacy. Stay tucked in. You've made it far, dear listener. Through myth, memory, shadow, and silence. The torchlight is low now, flickering softly in the corners of the mind. But the path is not yet closed. Because Hades, the god of what lies beneath, is not merely a figure of the past. His influence seeps into the present. This final chapter isn't about ancient stories. It's about how those stories never really ended. Let us walk together, gently now, into the legacy of the Lord of the Underworld. Unlike the loud festivals for Zeus or Dionysus, Hades had no great public temple in most cities. But that didn't mean people ignored him. Far from it. They revered him in whispers, in groves, caves, and funerary rites. Hades was honored in privacy. His name itself was rarely spoken. Instead, people referred to him as Pluton, meaning the wealthy one. Why? Because all riches come from below. Gems, metals, seeds. He was the source of material and agricultural abundance, not just death. In Eleusinian mysteries, he played a crucial part in the spiritual transformation of initiates. His realm seen not as an end, but as a sacred passage. It was not worship built on fear. It was respect. a god you approached with clean hands and clear purpose, a god you did not disturb needlessly, but one you thanked for holding the balance. Archaeologists have found funerary coins buried with the dead, even in unmarked graves, meant for Sharon's toll. They've uncovered curse tablets inscribed with pleas or accusations, left at the edges of tombs, calling upon underworld deities to witness oaths or punish wrongdoers. These weren't just rituals. They were acts of trust in the justice of Hades. People believed that if earthly systems failed, the god of the dead would set things right. Offerings to Hades were black animals, honey cakes, or libations of wine poured directly into the earth. He was honored in the chthonic way, downward, not upward. His symbols remained etched into household shrines, private altars, and civic oaths, not to control him, but to acknowledge him. Because to forget Hades was to forget consequences. From Homer to Hesiod, from tragedy to epic, Hades has always been depicted as serious, stern, but never needlessly cruel. But as centuries passed, his image evolved, refracted through culture, philosophy, and fear. In Renaissance art, he becomes more regal, a crowned king, not a horned devil. In romantic poetry, he's a lover, mournful and deep. In modern fiction, he becomes both villain and tragic hero, depending on the tale. In Shakespearean metaphor, hell becomes a place of dramatic tension. In Dante's Inferno, the underworld becomes a complex moral geography, more Christianized, more fire. But even then, you'll notice, Hades the god rarely appears. Instead, his realm is borrowed, reshaped, and repurposed. The Greek underworld is so foundational, it becomes the canvas upon which Western stories of death and morality are painted. He becomes the archetype of the keeper, silent, stoic, and pivotal. Let's ease into something more modern. You've seen him, haven't you? Cloaked in blue flame or animated with smug charisma. In Disney's Hercules, Hades is a fast-talking villain, part mob boss, part stand-up comedian. He's clever, sarcastic, and oddly endearing. Is it accurate to myth? Not exactly, but it shows how culturally potent Hades has become, recognizable at a glance. More recently, the game Hades by Supergiant Games gave us a new interpretation, a noble, complex, and deeply paternal figure, still stern, still shadowy, but no longer the villain. This version of Hades cares for his kingdom, wrestles with fatherhood, protects sacred boundaries. Players fell in love with this portrayal because it felt true. And isn't that the goal of myth? To feel true, even if it isn't fact. Now let's step even further inward. Carl Jung, the famed psychologist, saw myth as a language of the unconscious. In that language, Hades represents the shadow self, the part of you you bury, the fears you avoid, the truths you suppress. To journey into Hades' realm is to look inward. It is therapy. It is grief. It is letting go of control. He is the voice that says, "Come sit with your sadness. You don't have to fix it, just witness it." Modern psychology echoes the wisdom of myth. Grief isn't a disease. Shadow work is necessary. Not all darkness is evil. Hades, as a symbol, becomes the king of internal work. He rules the part of you that's quiet, deep, and healing. In a world obsessed with light, progress, and productivity, Hades reminds us that stillness is sacred, that endings are part of cycles, that silence has its own kind of wisdom, that tending to what's beneath the surface, emotionally, spiritually, or historically, is how we stay whole. He is not death. He is the place that makes room for death, and in doing so, makes room for rebirth. That's why his story has survived. Not because it frightens, but because it grounds. Hades is the god of what we avoid, and what we must eventually embrace. So here we are, listener, not at the end, but at the gathering, where the story settles, where breath returns, where quiet is not emptiness, but fullness. You've wandered with Hades through myth, marriage, memory, and meaning. And in doing so, you've taken part in something older than words, something sacred. Let's close our eyes now, not in fear, not in finality, but in peace.